Okay, so good morning to all of you and welcome back. This is the Master of Science in Bioethics at St. Thomas University, beginning this new year of grace, 2023, always with a little prayer. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, this morning we come before your presence in the name of your Son, Jesus. Humbly we ask that you send your Holy Spirit to illumine our hearts and minds, always to discern your will in our lives and live according to your will. We know, Lord, and we are convinced that you always want what is best for each one of us. At the beginning of this new year of grace, still within the Christmas season, we ask that we open our hearts especially to your peace in our hearts and our conscience, and to the community that surrounds us, and to peace on earth in a very special way, with all the complex challenges that are involved starting this new year, with so many different mindsets of 8 billion people, and not everyone thinks alike. As we say, each head is a world. May we all come together in the essentials of life, which is your presence among us, within us, so that this new year of grace we may come closer to peace in our hearts and to peace on earth. This we ask in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So a happy new year to all of you, and blessed Christmas season. It's not over yet. In fact, it will be over on Monday, right? Because this weekend is the solemnity of the Epiphany, which in most of the rest of the world is celebrated on January 6th. But in the United States and a few other countries of the world, it's moved to the closest Sunday, which will be tomorrow, including the vigil tonight, Saturday. And that's the second big solemnity, the second big mystery of the Christmas season. First, the Nativity of the Lord, December 25th, which is a manifestation of the incarnation of God, God incarnate, mostly to the Jewish people. Who showed up first after Mary and Joseph? The shepherds, who were presumably Jews or perhaps Palestinians, but they were local from the region. So those who were basically expecting a Messiah. And then the Epiphany with the Magi coming from the Orient, from the East, meaning that they were not Jews, meaning that they were Gentiles, you and I mostly. And so they were not necessarily expecting a Messiah. And yet they're following a natural sign. So here comes in nature, right? And the guidance of nature. Nature talks to us even about the supernatural. Following that natural sign called a star, most likely was a comet, because it had a direction, right? It was a star is just blinking there. Where do you go with a star? But a comet leaves a tail. And so it points to a direction. It's a vector. And represents the manifestation of God in Jesus for all humanity, right? For all humanity, so universal Savior. And then finally, the baptism of the Lord, 30 years after his birth. So Christmas is not only about baby Jesus. Welcome, Antonio. It's a theophany. It's a manifestation of God. You know, it's a Trinitarian manifestation. I'm taking a little time to say this because this year, that third solemnity of the baptism of the Lord will fall on Monday, the day after Epiphany. And so most folks will not go to Mass that day. It is a solemnity, but it's not a holy day of obligation. But it does close the Christmas season 30 years later as an adult. Why? Because it's a theophany. It's a manifestation of God. In other words, it's a Trinitarian manifestation. As Jesus rises from the waters, that mysterious baptism, the heavens open, the Holy Spirit descends, That's two, Jesus, Holy Spirit, and the voice of the Father is heard. This is my beloved Son, on whom my favor rests. Listen to him, because he's about to begin his public ministry, right? So it's a Trinitarian manifestation, and it's a joyful manifestation because Jesus is not being tortured yet, and therefore an epiphany, a joyful manifestation. Those are the three big solemnities in the Christmas season: the birth of Jesus, the Magi, and the baptism of the Lord, launching his public ministry. Okay, and so also to point out that you see our faith is an incarnate faith. There's baby Jesus who necessarily had to metabolize, and he metabolized for 9 months within his mother's womb before being born and taking his first breath. So he is identical to each one of us, except sin, right? Because he came from an immaculate conception, which was his mother. So there was no original sin to transmit. But I'm trying to highlight and point out the interaction between nature and grace, between science and religion. That our faith is incarnate, and so it speaks about the natural event and glorifies it to the supernatural. God is using the natural to manifest the supernatural, right? And in a way, that's what we try to do with bioethics. We try to look at natural events and let nature talk to us about the supernatural, about how God wants us to behave according to his divine will. Okay, before going any further, any questions or comments from last year? Anything pending, anything new? Everybody still alive and well? What happens Tuesday of this coming week? It's back to the gym, right? Now we got to pay the piper. For 2 plus weeks, we've been doing nothing but eating and partying. So now we got to pay the piper. I've been paying the piper all along because I've been working at the forest all along, several hours practically every day. So I can just keep on eating, no problem. Part of it is also metabolism. I'm sorry, but metabolism is a big deal about, staying in shape, basically. So that's just comes from nature. All right, now, so no questions, no comments, nothing yet going forward? All right, well, if you do, as always, just jump in. Remember, okay, my neglect, I want to welcome a new member of the new cohort, Elizabeth Villaverde. Let me just turn the camera here for a moment. Say hi to the virtuals. Okay. So Elizabeth has also a scientific background, and she works with DNA, basically DNA fingerprinting, looking at the genetic fingerprinting associated with biotech and insurance, right? Okay. I don't know, anything else you want to tell us at the beginning?
Excited to start.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Excited to start and learn more.
Okay, we know each other from back some time here in the town of Miami. I say that Miami is actually a small town with big pretensions, right? Because sooner or later you talk to someone who may be a stranger at first, and you start talking about family and friends, and you don't have to go too far up, and you find some mutual friend. We already have a mutual friend that we didn't know from each other, another medical doctor team, husband and wife here in town. Okay, so go forward and talk about the old cohort and the new cohort, right? Now, this is no reference to chronological age. By the way, I turned 70 in November, so I'm 71 months old. Thank you. I'm enjoying the amazing, eh? So a little formaldehyde that I take, and a little shot of formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a preservative that we use in biology to preserve animals, dead animals. So life begins at 70, okay? And that's how it goes. Oh, yes. Yes, yes. Life begins at 70. All right. Now, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the old cohort and new cohort, but there's something in common that I want to say first, kind of back-ending, because then I'm going to address mostly the old cohort first. And then when I'm done with that, if you have questions or comments, otherwise you're excused and dismissed, and then I'll continue with the new cohort further in, okay? But what is in common is the internship, all right? So the internship, as you know, is a grand total of 150 hours. And so for the old cohort, that is due at the end of April, because beginning of May, I have to turn grades in and you have to show up for graduation, commencement exercises, right? The ceremony, the graduation ceremony. This May, 2023, that's actually, it's not 5 months, it's 4 months. And it's even less than 4 months, it's about 3.5 months. So by then, you all need to be have completed those 150 hours, okay? Most of you are doing great, you're going forward. In fact, maybe 1 or 2 of you have already completed the 150. But what I need is to send me each one of you your spreadsheet. For example, you're looking at my email on the screen view here. So Father Dan has already sent me. He read the email last night, and here it is. Just before midnight, he sent me his spreadsheet of the hours, right? So do that, please. Send me that, so I'll look at it and address it individual, whoever needs some extra help there to complete the hours, but particularly the old cohort, the cohort who is graduating now in May, please send me that this weekend, please. Also, because on Monday, I'm going out of town and I'm going to Rome, Italy, because my Italian aunt, the sister of my father, is going to be 100 years old. So you see, so I have a message to take her, which is life begins at 100. Could be eternal life, you never know. But she's frail, but still fairly alert, okay? She's always lived in Rome. She's the only sibling to my father, and she's the only one left from that generation. Sorry to talk a little bit about my family, but you know, these are important things, and Christmas is also a family time, right? So she's the only one left from that generation on both sides. On my father's side, on my mother's side, some have died young, like my dad died from a heart attack at 65. Some have died old, my mom almost at 90. But here is Aunt Egidia, and she's still going there. So we're having a little family reunion on the Italian side over there in Rome, and hopefully including a Mass of Thanksgiving for family and for Aunt Egidia, all right? She was also instrumental at the beginning of last century. I mean, you know, you consider from 1923, what she has seen. They lived through the Second World War in Rome under El Duce. Mussolini would spill out his speeches there at the Piazza Venezia, right downtown Rome. And my dad was an old teenager back then. And my Aunt Egidia was a young adult. And all that. Then she worked in the Secretary of State after the Second World War in the 1950s. She worked in the State Department for Italy, and she got my father into that State Department early on. And so Dad came over as a young upstart with the Marshall Plan conferences for the reconstruction of Europe. Way back, he was in his early 20s. Those conferences started in Washington, D.C., in 1946. They were named after, I think it was a General Marshall, right? For the reconstruction of Europe, because Europe was devastated with saturated bombing from the Nazi regime. When the alarm sounded, everybody went on the ground and the city was obliterated with saturation bombing. We did the same on the Allied side. Anyway, at some point, those conferences from Washington, D.C. were transferred to Havana, And that's where he met my mother, a beautiful young woman who was 13 years older than him, fell madly in love with her, proposed, etc., etc., and the rest is history. And so she was very instrumental by being here, one way or another. So you see again the connections, right? So we're having that little celebration, which means, and I'll be there for about 10 days, which means the next Saturday we're not meeting, right? But then we'll start full force again the following. So in 2 Saturdays, So next Saturday you're off, but you're not off. This is what's going to happen. Okay, so the internship, send me your spreadsheet so I see where each one of you is individually, and then we'll talk individually. Elizabeth, I'll bring you up to speed with that, so no problem. For the new cohort, essentially, we're looking at a December graduation, right, of this year. And so for new cohort, you still have 11 and a half months to do that. But when you do 11 and a half months in 150, that's getting close to about 15 hours per month, all right, throughout. But you want to front end that so that you can leave it for the last minute. So there's work to do on this internship thing, which can also be, as I've mentioned many times, a variety of venues. It doesn't have to be all the same thing. Okay. Any questions or comments about the internship?
With the forest, you still do the forest event.
Yeah, the forest is still available, and so you're nearby, so take advantage of that. Get in touch with me. Yes, it does include doing work in the forest here, because during the work, it's sometimes it's a little monotonous, and so we talk about all kinds of stuff in bioethics. And there are other students coming in. Some are from this cohort, some are other volunteers, and so there is definitely interaction. It meets the requirements for the internship, which is basically to engage others in bioethical issues. And of course, environmental bioethics is part of it. Okay, sorry, Denisha?
It's a total, sorry, Professor, it's a total of 150 hours, correct?
150, yes. 150.
For the entire program, right?
Yes, for the entire program.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't supposed to do 150 last semester and 150 this semester.
No, total. Grand total 150. It's just that, oh, thank you. Okay, so you bring to mind another point that internship is anchored for some of you, maybe all of you, it's anchored in this semester. All right, it's anchored in this semester. Anchored meaning that I have to post it somewhere as a course and it's pass, no pass. So to give credit. All right, so it's anchored this semester, but which will be true, let's say, will be real for the old cohort, the cohort that is finishing in May, right? Because that's it, in May, you have no more time to finish it. But it will continue until the end of the calendar year for the new cohort, even though it's anchored in this semester. So what happens? What do? For the new cohort, I simply put pass in anticipation. So you owe me hours credits, but pass, because it's inconceivable not to pass, right? You just have to do the hours. So that's what I do, but I have to anchor it somewhere. And so it's anchored so that you have 2 courses per semester each. All right. So you'll see it coming up on the bill and whatnot. You'll see it as part of the credit system for this semester.
So the internship is always a second course during the semester, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
For every semester?
No, just for this one.
Okay.
Just for this one, so that you get the credits equivalent for that. Right? So it's basically 2 courses per semester throughout the 4 semesters, which will add up to the 30 credits. And some courses most of them are 4 credits, and that's how we can do it in 8 courses. Now, there is one exception, Kendall Brock. Is on a faster track because she's actually finishing in summer 1. But I've made arrangements with her already for this extra courses that she needs to take. All right. So sometimes I need to tailor it to each student. Okay. So if there are no other questions about the internship, move forward now. I'm going to focus on the old cohort, the cohort graduated in May for a little bit. So new cohort hang around, and this is also a good information for new cohort going forward, because eventually you'll have this other course, which is the course on healthcare bioethics, all right? And which is the actual, the last lecture course that is pending for the all cohort. All right, so this is how it works. I need to go where? Yes, to. Oh, yes, to my Bobcat. So are you familiar with my Bobcat? So Elizabeth, some of this is new to you, so just feel free to ask anytime, okay? But basically, this is the university website. You can log in already, right?
Yes.
Excellent. Now, you see this label here, my Bobcat, you go there. Oh, so pull down, yeah, okay. So on the pull down menu, go to Canvas. And the rest of you already know how to get into Canvas. Oh, sorry, apologize, I just see a chat here now, just saw a chat. Okay, did you chat? Thank you. All right, so this is my dashboard of the Canvas. Canvas is the platform that we use, the virtual platform that we use for communication between faculty and students, and we post our courses here. Each course appears as a tile. We call these rectangles or the squares tiles, all right? So you see that I have, aside from this Faculty Senate tile, which is only faculty, I have these 3 tiles that are published. Then I have these other that are unpublished. All right, these are courses. These are all different courses. So you can see the internship is here. I can go in and you can do the same. Now here in people, the 11 of you should appear. Okay, across me, they should make 12. So let's see, Kendall, Ken, Kenny, Sarah, Father Franco, Cristina, Antonio, Father Dan, Farid, Jose, Denisha, Elizabeth, and Father Steven. Okay, so I think everyone is here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh, yes, because with Elizabeth together, the 2 cohorts are 12, myself 13. The 2 Sheen brothers are here, siblings. Let's see. Yeah, okay, good. So that's the internship course, right? And then eventually here, it will just be a P or NP, right? Now, back to dashboard, your tiles. Then I'm going to go to this. So for the old cohort, you don't have this tile anymore, fundamental bioethics. We covered this course a year ago, right? Or in, was it spring? No, it was fall. It was fall of last year. Anyway, no, it was spring, wasn't it? It was spring of last year. Yes. Okay. So a year ago. So you no longer have this tile, but you do have this one here. For the new cohort, you don't have the healthcare tile, but you do have the fundamental bioethics tile, right? Okay, good. Now,
I don't have the healthcare bioethics tile yet.
This one? Oh,
Yes.
yes. So Father Dan, why is it? Yes, thank you for pointing that out. For some reason, oh, I think you have to accept the letter. If you go, thank you. So we'll do some cleanup right now, especially since I'm leaving on Monday. I want to leave all this done. So let me go back for a moment to my Bobcat. Where's my Bobcat? Okay, I go through here again. Father Dan, if you don't mind going into your student portal. of my Bobcat. And then self-service, student portal. I'll do the same for faculty portal. And advising and mentoring for you is something like a course plan or something like that, you know, where you normally have your courses show up. Are you following me?
Yes.
Good, all right. And now here, see this
Oh.
one here. If you accept that, then I can get you registered because it's showing like this. Or you can register.
Okay, I'm done. I did it.
Good. And now let me update this because it's supposed to be live. And it should appear with a gray, with a check mark. All right, let's go timeline. Not there. Let me go to course plan. Spring term 1. Okay, now this one, let me try it on my end. And I should get a little green check mark. Green or blue is good. There it is. Okay. Super duper. Now this should have turned gray or white. There it is. Excellent. You're in. And therefore, now let's see if this updates also. Tile. Healthcare. Okay, now going here to, let me just do a refresh just in case. And now people, this may or may not have you yet. Good is not here yet. Okay. This one, because they don't communicate too well, the Canvas and our own internal data management. So this within 24 hours. Okay, Father Dan, if you don't mind logging in tomorrow and see if you have that tile. All right.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
And you're welcome. And that's the task that we have pending. And when you do have that tile, you should also appear here on the list. All right, good. So that also means, Father Dan, that you don't have access to what I'm going to be talking about yet, but you can see it on my screen and it's being recorded, which is this. When we go to syllabus, here it is. You can download it. First, you see there are 8 modules, right? Now these modules are empty. If you click into it, there's nothing there. It's fine because it's in the syllabus. But I generated 8 modules because these modules in turn give me an opportunity to post a grade, you see, on grade, right, individually. All right, so as we go along, these are filled in just like in previous courses. And back to syllabus then, you navigate up here on the upper left with the cursor, syllabus. Take a look at the syllabus because here in the syllabus is embedded the 8 lectures. Well, 6 of the 8. All right, the first is the usual blah, blah, blah. Let me move this fellow over to here. Right, people can see on the screen. Now, here are the modules. Module 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And this course is team taught because since it's healthcare bioethics, I am a bioethicist, I am a geneticist, I'm a moral theologian, but I'm not a medical doctor. So all the while I'll be trying to fake it for this whole year, but I'm not really a medical doctor, but I know a good number of medical doctors in town. And in fact, one of you has actually taken the course. And so I've asked these medical doctors over the years to prepare a lecture on healthcare ethics in a particular field, in particular area. All right, so it's healthcare bioethics. So first we look at healthcare bioethics from 2 perspectives, the perspective of the patient and the perspective of the medical doctor or the healthcare provider. By extension, it will also include, for example, nurses, nurse practitioners, etc., but healthcare providers. All right. So those are the first two lectures. And modules, lectures, patient issues, and professional issues. So the first two lectures are first from the patient perspective, bioethical issues that can come up, and then from the provider perspective. Then we move into a particular area of mental health, because here is a medical doctor who is a psychotherapist. She belongs to the Catholic Psychotherapy Association. And so it's a national organization. And so she put this lecture together for us. Then I am competent in two areas. And when we get to this lecture, you'll see why. But I will give a lecture on transplantation and clinical trials. So on transplantation, living and cadaveric, I'm talking about vital organ transplantation, right? So I do have a little bit of expertise there. So I'll give that lecture. The others are videos. So you watch the video, you do the summary, and you send it in just like normal. This one will be in person here, and we'll do the three modes, whoever shows up live. Otherwise, the link for remote live, like you're on right now. And the third option is, again, to watch the video. Then we go at a larger, beyond the individual patient or the individual healthcare provider. We go broader to society. So basically, social issues is public health. I have another doctor, pulmonologist, who has recorded this lecture. All right. So this is public health. Then we get into a little more administration. So institutional issues. This one is from another medical doctor. Right now, she's actually doing infectious diseases institutionally for the Baptist system. Baptist Hospital is one of the largest systems we have in Miami, and they're expanded now. I think they have a campus, new campus in Palm Beach. Didn't have started a new campus in Palm Beach. And anyway, that's the Baptist system. It used to be a standalone. I remember when Baptist Hospital, some of you may remember, was a standalone hospital there on Kendall Drive and 87th Avenue, right? And now it's become very large, and I think it's a very good system. Anyway, she does infectious diseases internally, institutionally, in the hospital, right? So, for example, MRSA and these superbugs, right, that are immune to an expanding range, spectrum of antibiotics. So that's a bioethical issue. Anyway, she put together this lecture. Then government regulations, and I'm going to mention the name because he's actually, I'm so humbled that and honored that he has seen such value in this program, the whole program, that he's actually joined, and he's one of the peers in the cohort, Dr. Jose Martinez, right? He put together this lecture when the program started 7 years ago. So we're going on the 7th year. So Dr. Martinez has been in high administration in healthcare systems, even a national system that has over 170 hospitals throughout the US. Now he's back local. So he has a lot of expertise in the interchange, the interaction between healthcare and government regulation, which is increasingly complex, right? So, and the bioethical issues that come up there. So he put together this lecture. And then finally, I'll come back, and this is a new lecture that I've put together, well, new for the past couple of years since COVID. So this one, because I was tracing the whole pandemic very closely that year that we had to go virtual, and I had a number of students with me doing some research on it. We have some data there that I'll present to you. So this last lecture, module 8, will be on the healthcare issue, the bioethics of pandemics, right? Since we've all lived it and literally survived because we're here, and we know that many, many other people did not survive it. So the bioethics of pandemics. So that will be the last one. Okay. All right. Any? Oh, yeah. So questions or comments on these 8 modules?
For your lectures, what time do we meet for your lectures?
Right. So I have a little. Let me see. Did I post it or not post it? Oh, okay. So now I have to bring out the Old Testament. This is the Old Testament and this is the New Testament. Okay. So in the Old Testament, I have all the dates pinned down. And let's see. Because the others are videos, you can work there at your pace, but also pace yourself. Please don't do all 8 summaries for me on the first week, all right? Because you'll kill me. You can pace yourselves weekly, etc. But basically, and there are also a couple of Saturdays that we'll skip. For example, aside from next week, no class, if you want to jot them down also as we go along, Saturday, February 18. February 18, there is no lecture. This is for the new cohort, basically, which will be on the ground, because we have an event happening on campus. We have a whole campus event that is associated with research. It's a conference that is a national undergraduate research conference. And we're expected to have about 500 undergraduate students to land on campus from all the universities in Florida and some national universities, Cornell and so forth, landing on campus for this 2 days of research talks and workshops and so forth. I'm doing a workshop on the forest, by the way, and that's going to be Friday the 17th and Saturday, February 18th. So no lecture that day, all right? There's a little skip there. Then we continue, for example, February 25th, we're back on the ground. So March 4th will be my lecture on transplants. Therefore, the new cohort will be off that day, all right? Saturday, March 4th will be my lecture on transplants here on the ground for the locals and virtual simultaneously for the remote. Again, Saturday, March 4th. I'll also text you these or email you these dates. That's the first one. Then March 11, we're back to the new cohort, the course on fundamentals. So you're back, the old cohort is back to videos at your pace going forward. And then I think it's April, the last one. Yeah, the last one will be April 29, literally our last Saturday. So pandemics, April 29, Saturday, April 29. And as you know, there's never a summary on the last lecture, right? So you can just sit in and soak it in and get into the discussion. It's always the last lecture, as you know, is kind of the state of the art and it's open-ended. Okay. And then graduation, I think your graduation will be May 5th. I think we can check, well, might as well take care of that too. So, you know, the good thing about computers is that they have information, they store information. So we can go here, again, back to our, my Bobcat portal. It's basically a database, it's a data storage, right? So here are my Bobcat on the right-hand side menu. There's one toward the bottom that should say calendar. There it is. They couldn't make it any smaller. And then academic calendar, spring 2023. I'm looking for the graduation date. Typically, it's down here. May commencement. Oh, May 10. Look at that. So it's a week after. It's a week after classes. Because we end classes. Oh, yeah. So we end classes May 5th, actually. We end classes May 5th, which is a Friday. That's for the whole university. For us, it will be the last Saturday of April, which is that April 29th. Okay. And then a week after that, or
May 11.
May 10, May 11 is for graduate. Yeah, so May 11 is Thursday. Okay. So for the old cohort, May 11, Thursday, I cannot tell you the time yet, if it's in the morning or the afternoon, most likely the morning, but plan for it. And if you folks who are out of town want to come into town, you're very much welcome. For priests, I can try to put you up overnight if you want to come in the night before, or something like that. You know, and we'll go have a nice celebration, dinner, something. But think about it.
That sounds great.
Okay, yeah, all right, super duper. You'll see our campus and our forest. I'll be talking about so much. Give you a tour after graduation. Okay, good. We've got a little field, so let me recenter back in to maybe the tile will. Yes, let me go back here. Yeah, okay, so this will refocus us. All right, so I had gone through the 8 modules. Now the 6 videos are embedded. So you keep going down through the blah, 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 and here are module topics. All right, so each one of these 6 is the same chronology. Of course, after, I forget if it's before, it's after mental health, right here, after mental health will be the live lecture with transplants. And then after government will be again the live lecture for pandemics. Okay, so 3 + 1 and 3 + 1. All these should be active, so you put your cursor on it and control enter, or no, control left click. There it is, here. Okay. Dr. Felipe Vizcarrondo is also the president of our Miami Guild of the Catholic Medical Association. Catholic Medical Association is it's international actually, but it's very big in the US. So we're close to 100 guilds throughout the US, and we have one guild in Miami. He's our president. He's retired, and he is a pediatrician by background. Okay, so you maximize it there, et cetera, and you treat it just like a video, which is what it is. All right, you can move it forward here. And then you can move it back also, okay, etc. Then you can minimize it back here. And I'm gonna close it and go to the next one, etc. So you can go through them. They're all active, as you can see. Okay. All right. At any point, any one of these is not active, let me know or talk to each other, because they're in the syllabus there embedded, as you can see. As long as this is virtual, in other words, in your tile in Canvas, all these 6 links are active, and they're videos that I have turned into YouTubes in my account.
When do we start?
You can start this afternoon if you so desire, but they all need to be finished by April 29th. Watch the video and do the summary, just like we've done before, you know.
So the module, like this.
Exactly, these are the modules, right? That's why I posted module 1, 2, 3, and then module 4 is transplants, and then 5, 6, 7, and module 8 is again pandemics. So I'll put a word. Okay, thank you, Antonio. What I'll do is this afternoon I'll fill in the module wording, all right, for the title so that you can match it. It will be patient. Module 1 will be patient. Module 2 will be healthcare professional. Module 3 mental, etc., etc. So you have a word anchor for the video.
Yes,
right?
Father Sophie.
Yes, Father Franco.
So if I do understand it, we will have only 2 lectures, two live lectures on the March 4th and 29th, and then just watch the video and send you the.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
perfect. Thank
Only
you.
2 live lectures because all these are already pre-recorded.
Okay,
The other
perfect.
6, all right?
Thank you.
In other words, at this point, you're welcome. At this point, since you've been working with the program already for over a year, then the video will do, because these are high quality and they're from actually the first, the founding, the original first cohort. All right. And speaking of summaries.
I will admit, I think that it's a little isn't it unfair that Dr. Martinez won't have to do a summary of I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You never know. Maybe I'll ask him to do one.
I agree. I don't think I could summarize what I said. So
It's a long one too. He's one of the ones who used up the 3 hour plus because he had a lot of ground to cover. Remember, but now that you mentioned summary, Father Dan, by the way, I think you've noticed by now that I'm doing a little thing on the summaries actually, but I'm gonna make it public, which is this. So if you do your first summaries very well, so that you get typically a 94 or 95 over 100, which is an A plus, right? In the first few summaries, then you don't have to do any more summaries. You can if you want to practice, continue to practice your writing skills and so forth, but you don't have to anymore. So this is what I'm saying, that if your first summaries, as some of you know already, if your first summaries are A plus, meaning a 93, 94, 95 or above, some of you are getting 99 and 100% on a summary, consistently. I'm not going to ask you to continue to summarize, because I get it that you get it, right? I get it that you get it, because you couldn't produce such high quality summaries without really getting the full detail of the lecture, right? So I ask you, you don't have to do any more summaries after that. So for the rest of you who have been doing summaries on a regular basis, and maybe you're at the A minus or the B plus or less, you can put a special emphasis on your first summaries, right, to bring them up to A plus, and then you're done with the summaries. And then you just have to enjoy the lectures and get into it and not worry about having to dish it out by Wednesday midnight. Okay, so the same applies with these. That's across the board for the healthcare bioethics, and also for the fundamental course that we're gonna start with the new cohort in a couple of Saturdays. So any questions there on that? See how it works? And some of you have had that experience already. Okay. Well, Dr. Martinez, if by the time you get to your 4th or 5th or 6th summary, you're up to the A plus, you don't have to use your own summary. Okay.
I don't think I could pass my own summary. Thank you for that.
All right. Okay, let me see where else. Anything else that I'm missing for the graduating cohort? I feel bad about calling you the old cohort, but it's how providential. It's funny how things work out. On average, your average age for the old cohort is higher, significantly higher than the new cohort, who are basically a bunch of young recent graduates. So it's just the way it works out. Chronologically, you're also the old cohort. On average. There's some exceptions at the individual level, but on average, yes, the old cohort is older than the new cohort. Let's say wiser. All right. What else? Okay, amazing. No questions. All right. So, well, at this point, you get it, because we've been traveling together this road for about a year now. If there are any other particular issues that do come up, feel free to call me, email me, text me, just get in touch with me. I should have internet also over there in Rome, on and off. Okay. So if anything happens that is crucial in this next 10 days or so, feel free to contact me. Otherwise, we'll pick it up. I should be back the 17th of January. So by the second half of January, I should be back here on the ground for the duration until May, until I applaud your graduation, your commencement. Antonio, please.
When you come back, you know, when you stay and you start being forward.
Yes, yes.
On that 17th, that's when you get-
Yeah, so the 17th itself, I arrive at night, so I'm not gonna be in the forest.
Yeah.
But by the 18th forward, I plan to be at the forest. I have there'll be some things here that I have to do administratively, but one way or another. In principle, by January 18 forward, I should be at the forest. Okay, except for Saturday mornings. Yeah. Yes, yeah. I'll catch up. Yeah, they say so on jet lag, they say on average, I bring this issue because again, for the benefit of the new cohort, we'll be dealing more and more with on average, in other words, the probabilistic model. We live in two worlds simultaneously, as the cohort knows, the world of reality, the deterministic world of this is my real skin here, you know, and the probabilistic world. In the probabilistic world, on average, you know, there's a good probability that we are alive right now on this planet, organically speaking. And so we have to go back and forth. Why did I say that? Yes. So most likely, the good thing about the probabilistic world is that we can talk about precisely probabilities, as the course that you just went through mathematically. We can quantify probability. You passed it. We can quantify probability. You know, it was not insignificant. Albert Einstein introduced that concept. Actually, he anchored it into his theory of relativity, because before Einstein, which goes back again a century, beginning of last century, before Einstein, probability was used as an approximation, but simply as approximation because we did not have, that our technology was not sophisticated enough to get to the level of detail. But it was the common belief in science. I said I wasn't going to lecture, but I am going to talk about science. It was a common belief in science up until the beginning of last century that the world and the universe, way beyond this world, this little tiny dot in the universe, planet Earth, was deterministic. You know, that we just needed the instrument that was precise enough and sophisticated enough to measure whatever we wanted to measure. And Einstein, with his both theories of relativity, special relativity first, which involves Euclidean geometry, you know, in other words, an inertial frame of reference, and then general relativity, which can include accelerations, which is most common in the universe, is based on probability. You know, there's a probability that we are going around, that we, the Earth, is going around the sun right now, okay, in an elliptical orbit. There's a probability, but until we actually describe that orbit, that has not been determined. But we can assume that the laws that are holding the Earth to translate, to rotate around the sun will hold together, that those laws will hold together next minute and next minute and next minute. All right, so the time, space, continuum and so forth. But part of his genius is inserting probability into the actual equation itself, so that we do have to move simultaneously back and forth between deterministic and probabilistic. The only thing is that we only live locally, right? We only live locally, here and now. We don't live simultaneously in several places, or we don't live universally throughout the entire universe, okay? And therefore, the laws that affect us existentially are local laws, here and now precisely. And so the deterministic world is sufficient for continuing to live and metabolize here and now. But when we go bigger beyond the Earth, for example, consider the pull of gravity of the sun on the Earth. Okay, that's beyond the Earth, right? Then we cannot do that without a probabilistic model. So we cannot, basically what I'm trying to say is we cannot keep the Earth going around the sun without inserting probability. And likewise, we cannot keep the whole planetary system and the solar system. We cannot keep the sun, our planetary system, embedded in the Milky Way without inserting probability. And the Milky Way as one of the trillions of galaxies that exist in the universe, the same. But that's not local, that's very universal, right? That's very far removed from the here and now. Where was I? I was talking about the healthcare bioethics course. All the 6 lectures are here, and the other 2 that I'll give. I don't know that I have anything else to say about the healthcare bioethics. Any of you think of something? While you're thinking, I'm going to do this and just generate a little email. Yes, and April 29, right? Yeah, so let me write here. March 4 is, what did I say? Transplants, bioethics. And April 29, pandemic bioethics. For the new cohort, you have to sit tight unless you want to peek into those lectures. You're welcome to come if you want to. Otherwise, you'll get this at the end of the year. And this is healthcare bioethics. And this is cohort 6, which is this one. See, I expanded it, which I need to do that and clean it up. And where is Denisha? Okay. That's the original one, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So, all right. So those are the dates, and there it goes. Now, any stones unturned? Well, plenty, I'm sure, but they'll show up as we follow. All right, folks, for the graduating cohort from the old cohort, I don't have anything else. If you don't have anything else either, you may go your way on this beautiful day of the day before the Epiphany for us in the US. Okay.
Happy Epiphany.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Bye all.
Okay. Thanks
Okay.
a lot. And
Father Sophie,
Bye, Professor. Have a good day.
no, Denisha, stick around.
I'm
You're
going
the
to
new
call
cohort.
you. I'm gonna call you after.
You're not old enough to leave yet. Give me a minute, Father Franco. Denisha, you're not old to leave enough. You're not old enough.
I'm sorry, I'm here.
I know, you're just pranking. All right, yes, Father Franco, I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm going to call you after class by 1 p.m. It's okay for you?
Yes, no problem. Yeah,
An
just
appointment
call me
to-
on my
to
cell
meet
phone.
you. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you so much. Okay. thank
Excellent.
you. Okay.
Okay, all the best. See you.
Bye,
Sure.
nice to meet you. Bye, nice to meet you.
Okay, all right. So now the new cohort.
2 of us?
Uh,
And then you go-
It's a total of 5, right? It's just that, so let's see. Denisha, do you have a camera by any chance for a moment so that Elizabeth may see you? I don't know if you have a camera available. Denisha, once again.
Yes, Professor, I do,
What?
but there's a
Okay.
glare.
Yeah, there it is. A moment. So, okay. And here on the screen here, we can make this a little bigger for a moment. Let's see if I grab somewhere here. No, I thought this could get big. Oh, maybe it's this one. Ah, there we go. All right. There. Okay, you can see yourself on the screen, Denisha? You can unmute if you want.
No, I don't see myself.
You don't see yourself? Oh, look at that. Oh, that's amazing. Do you see me?
Yes.
Oh, wow. And you don't see you. Well, we
No.
see you. Okay, looking great.
Thank you.
There is clear in the background, but that's okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so Elizabeth is joining us, and Denisha is this is the second semester for the other four. Denisha graduates, a recent graduate from here, from St. Thomas, and so the other three, right? And Denisha also works here in administration. Okay.
And
Then,
I'm also an RA
oh yes,
and
right.
a TA for residential life. So I'm super busy most of the time. You see me walking, I'm always on the go.
Yes, excellent. Right. So that's another advantage because Denisha lives here on campus together with another student. Her name is Kendall Brock. Kendall is from Texas, and Kendall also lives here on campus, and they'll be working together with me closely on the forest project, which you keep hearing about. And then the other two are two siblings, the Sheen siblings, Sarah and Kenneth. And they have in their background Native American. And so they have a special love for the forest and nature. And they have worked with me before. They're also graduates. So these other four students are also graduates from St. Thomas in the biology or natural sciences. And the two brothers, Kenny and Sarah, have worked with me in the forest in previous years. And something that we call the Summer Research Institute, the SRI, which we run in the summer, and it's research. And several professors, typically we have about half a dozen professors here on campus who become PIs, principal investigators, right? You know how that works. And so we have a number of students under our wing for the summer for a couple of months, about 2.5 months. And we each do research in different fields. Some are in labs here, most of them are in labs in the building, but my lab is the forest. It's a field lab, right? It's a field research, and it involves mostly ecological restoration. And ecological restoration is that this is a Dade County pine forest. Elizabeth, you've been in Miami for several years, so you've heard about Dade County pine, right? And this is the last remaining highland Dade County pine forest left in Dade County. So we're trying to preserve it. It's about 15 acres. You can see it from the window there. These are actual conifers. They're pines. It's called slash pine. And they're the only conifers that adapted to a subtropical environment, because conifers, as you know, are from up north, right? They're adapted to harsh winter environment. They have needles instead of leaves. They have cones instead of flowers. And internally, they have resin instead of sap. So sap is a white milky substance that has a lot of water and tends to freeze in the summer, in the winter. But resin is oily, amber color, and thick, and doesn't freeze. So they stay green, and that's also why pine trees, conifers, are also called evergreens, because in the winter they don't lose their leaves like the deciduous trees. They stay green, and that's their leg up, because in the winter they continue through that harsh environment to live and to thrive, right? And so conifers do become the dominant species up north in cold winter environment. These guys adapted to a subtropical environment, which is warm and humid year-round, typically. And they did that after the last ice age, which happened about 10 to 12,000 years ago. So they've been around longer than humans have been on the peninsula of Florida. Okay, and they adapted so well, they actually became the dominant species. In other words, the largest, most dominant tree back then for 10,000 years covered the whole peninsula of Florida. Until the 1900s, about 100 years ago, again, a century ago, you've heard of Henry Flagler and how he brought the railway. The metals did not exist here. Metal objects and tools did not exist in the Native Americans, the Miccosukee and the Seminole and the Tequesca, all these native tribes, because there were no metals on the ground. It's porous rock, you know, the limestone. So really the hardest thing that people had here, the Native Americans, was shells and conchs. And you cannot cut a tree with a shell. So they're left alone, they just lived around them. But when Flagler and the modern colonizers came from the Northeast down, including the railroad, they brought metal equipment with them, including the wide blade saw that we see in the frontier movies and the cowboy movies. One fellow gets on one side of the tree and the other one gets on the other side, and they go back and forth until they cut the tree, right? Well, they started cutting down these trees. Also because they figured that this is a good introduction for you about the forest and kind of recap for the other four. They also figured that because of the resin inside the tree, inside the pine, they're resistant to termites and to boring beetles and all these other insects that are in the tropical. So the wood is resistant to all those creatures. So it's excellent wood for construction. They started cutting them down. And back then there was no building code or anything like that. So buildings were a matter of wood. There was no concrete block or anything. And the long and the short is that they started cutting down trees, making the whole towns out of them. And now we only have about 1% left of the original slash pine in South Florida, because mostly it's been replaced by urbanization. You told me you just came from Boca. On that tri-rail, you can go from Palm Beach all the way down, 95. If you go from Palm Beach down to Miami, you go through 3 counties. You can't even tell where one county ends and the other one begins, because it's all urbanized. It's all one urban corridor. That used to be all pine trees. And now it's buildings. That's where we live. We need to, our footprint, we need to live somewhere. So only 1% of the slash pine left in South Florida. And in Dade County, this is the last highland forest. I say highland because we're also on top of a sandy ridge here, which means that it can rain buckets of water when we have this summer rainstorms, all right? And you go out 5 minutes later, you don't find a puddle anywhere because it rains right through the sand. We have dozens and dozens of feet of sand. You go down south in the Kendall area and all that, West Kendall and all, even Pinecrest and all that area downtown, Westchester, after one of those rainstorms, it floods. Exactly. This is actually prime real estate in this area of Miami Gardens. In the Southwest, because it becomes a lowland. So there's a slight incline on the terrain that goes down, and gets closer to the water table. So the ground is kind of saturated. You make a hole down there up to 4 or 5 feet, water comes out. All right. So it's a very unique forest. It's highland, the other reason for that, there's also slash pine down south. There are patches of slash pine down in the southwest of the county, but it's the same species. But if you notice, they grow tall and spindly like that, right? Very thin and tall, like matchsticks. For example, I don't know if you've been to the parish of Our Lady of Lourdes, right? And between Our Lady of Lourdes and behind Our Lady of Lourdes, going south, there's the airport, the new Miami Airport, which used to be where FIU is now. That was the old Miami Airport, where FIU is. Okay. In between those two, there's a patch of slash pine, which is Camp. It used to be Camp Matacumbe. It's a boys' town. Okay, it's got little cabins inside. There's some at Tropical Park, yes, but they're standalones. It's not a forest ecosystem. They also have Australian pine. Now, the ones that you may be thinking about is the one that they used to do the Christmas tree lighting along the Palmetto South from Bird Road to Miller. There's a bunch, but those are Australian pines, which is different. It's not a real pine, but it is from Australia, and we'll cover Australian pines in this course going forward.
So this is what again, slash?
Slash pine, like a slash, forward or backward slash, just because of the needle, it's a slash, it's called slash pine, yeah. The other one is Australian pine, which is not a real pine, but it is from Australia. It's something called convergent evolution that we'll cover in this course, all right? And And that one is highly invasive. The Australian pine is highly invasive. But these guys are native. And what's happened is that because they're here, they're standing on so much sand, the roots are unencumbered and the roots grow massively. You know, the roots can be anywhere 2 to 4 times the size of the tree. And so because the roots are unencumbered, then the trees themselves become very wide to their maximum girth or width. All right. We have about 300 of the slash pine in the property. Most of them are in the forest, and a few are standalones with lawn underneath. But the ones in the forest, what happens is they get so massive that it takes 2 persons to go out around the trunk. And for some of them, it takes 3 persons to go out around the trunk, you know, with our hands extended, with our arms extended. So they are massive, and that is their maximum girth. They get to live 150 to 200 years, all right? Most of these are anywhere 60, 80 years old, more or less. We've counted rings on a few of them. But also, since the university started about 60 years ago, a number of invasive plants have been introduced, either knowingly or unknowingly. But the long and the short is that in these 6 decades, since the university started in the 1960s, many invasive plants established themselves inside the forest, including trees from Latin America, like the Brazilian pepper tree, which is now invasive, a pest all over the place, or from the Caribbean, or from Africa, including grasses, tall grasses that grow 8 feet tall and look like sugarcane, all right? From India, for example, the banyan tree, right? That is a type of fig, and it comes from India. It's amazing. We have plants from Southeast Asia, like the Schefflera, the Brella tree, plums, Java plum from Java in South Pacific. So we have plants from all over the world that establish themselves in there. And little by little, they were taking over the forest and turning it into a horrible tropical jungle. Because what happens, invasive species don't have any natural enemies. And so they grow faster, and they tend to replace the native population. Pine trees grow very slowly, and therefore the other vegetation overgrows, and makes a dense jungle impenetrable. And so over time, it would replace the native vegetation, including the slash pine forest. So the nutshell of my project for several years now in the forest has been clearing out the invasives. All right. I'll give you more details once you come and actually take a look at it on site and show you the hands-on project. But basically, it's a 2-stage thing. The first stage is taking out the invasive plants, anywhere from weeds to actual trees. And then the second stage is to allow the native vegetation to come back. And for the native vegetation that has been extinct locally, that is no longer here, we reintroduce it. Now, you may be familiar with a place called Fairchild Tropical Garden, right? Okay, we're associated with them. And so they are supplying us with plants that are native, but no longer here locally. And we're reintroducing, repopulating.
Slash pines?
No, the slash pine we have.
Right, but we're not putting any more of those.
We have plenty. What we do is we relocate them to areas that are barren. We put in slash pine in that area to repopulate, to enhance it. But they'll do it on their own also, you know.
So they live 100 to 150 years, so when they die?
150 to 200 years is their lifespan.
Right.
When they die,
just-
they start falling off the branches, you know, but it will take months, sometimes years, right? When they die, the first thing that falls off are the needles. They turn brown and fall off. Then the twigs fall off also, and you get kind of the skeleton standing there for years. That's called a snag. It's called a snag. Snag, yes. And they make excellent housing for birds, for nesting and all that, and for perching. It stays for several years. It will, well, never is never, right? But decades. Right, well, for decades, basically, decades. Also, the snags have another purpose, which is this. I mean, nature is so elegant. So the boring beetles and termites, they're out there, all right? And when they don't have a snag, they'll go into the live tree. So for the snag, because the resin is basically gone or solidified and the wood is beginning to rot by fungi and bacteria, then it's much easier for the termites and the boring beetles and all these other insects to establish their colonies in the snags. So it's opportunistic, they'd rather do little work than a lot of work. So it keeps those creatures off the live trees. Number one. Number two, they also serve, like I say, for nesting of other birds. And also importantly, so we'll talk about the food pyramid and the food chain and all that. And the top is always carnivores. The top of the chain is always carnivores, whether it's on land or in the ocean. For example, top carnivores in the ocean are the sharks. Top carnivores on land are things like lions, tigers, wolves, and in birds is the birds of prey, like eagles, hawks, falcons, and we have a number of hawks that live in the forest. So they love to perch up there from the highest branch and see the clearing and see where the little mouse is, and they'll dive right into the mouse, and that's going on in our forest. So we have an ecosystem, right? It's biodiversity, it's self-contained, we're trying to preserve it. There are a number of other animals that come through the forest, like opossums and foxes, and the cute one with the mask, raccoon. And innumerable little creatures and insects. Wow, it's full. We're also trying to make the forest like a butterfly garden, all right, for biodiversity. It's already happening. You wouldn't believe the number of monarchs that I've been seeing in the forest this time of year because they're migrating. The monarch butterflies are migrating from Canada to Mexico. They've been tagged with little tiny tags. They migrate from Canada to Mexico to a forest, a pine forest that is just outside the city of Mexico in a dense pine forest that is called Desierto de los Leones. I used to live in Mexico years ago. We used to go there for picnics and stuff. It's a beautiful place. And they have found inside these mountains where these monarchs go to pupate, in other words, to lay their eggs and the larvae and then the chrysalis that metamorphoses into the adult butterfly, right? So the butterfly that we see flying around, that's the adult. The juvenile is a caterpillar. All caterpillars will turn into either moths or butterflies. That place was discovered, and when it's in season and the butterflies are there, it's a seasonal thing. It just looks orange. The whole forest looks orange for the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of butterflies that come to that one area. Nobody knows exactly why, that one area of the forest, and it turns orange. It's just amazing. And they come from Canada. So they do this migration in the fall and winter, and then the spring, summer, they go back. Unbelievable, huh? I mean, we expect it from birds, but butterflies? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, okay, so back to the new cohort. So we're going into the other 4 students, Elizabeth, they had already a course last semester, which was environmental bioethics, okay? So you'll pick that one up in the normal sequence. And by the time we get to the fall, there may be a new cohort coming in because now I have what is known as rolling admission. It used to be only in the fall, students would come in and the whole cohort would move through, and I would not start a new cohort until this one went through. But now I have inquiries all the time. So basically I'm starting a new cohort every semester. And sometimes they're staggered like that, just like this one that they're finishing May, right? The old cohort. But there was a course that they took in common last semester, which was environmental bioethics. So that's one that you still need to take, but you still have this whole year in front of you for courses anyway, so that will come in at some point. Okay. Now back to, all right, so I talked about the internship already. All right, so this new course, which is the fundamental principles in Catholic bioethics. Let me go back to my tile. And I minimize this.
Mine says it's not available until January 9th. For some reason.
Yeah, very weird. Let me see.
It says they'll not be able to participate in this course until January 9th at 10 a.m.
They were supposed to be open by now, but let me go there for a moment. Let me go back here. Here we go. Okay, so let me go to that tile and see what's going on. Because I have published it. Anisha, since you're live remotely, can you please go to your Canvas and see if you can open the fundamentals course? In the meantime, I'm going to go here to see if you are listed, which you are. Everyone is here. Yeah, everyone is listed. So, sí. La sabia.
There you go.
Somos los sabios del grupo. Estos son los jovencitos. I think, yeah, Denisha may have stepped out for a moment. Okay, when you hear me again, Denisha, please go to your tile of the fundamentals course and see if you can open it, because it is published here. Let me see the syllabus. Here we go, syllabus. You have a syllabus for this course?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's 513, right?
yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, well, let's work with the syllabus, because that's the important thing is the syllabus. See if it's,
Now it's telling me the same thing, no additional details.
all right, let me
I
do some.
see it. So it clicked on it.
No, okay, because it's probably anchored to the Canvas. Let me do this. I'm gonna send an email to all of you with the syllabus. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, okay, so let me download the syllabus. So I'll send it to all of you and you can see it. Okay. Let's see. All right, attach. There it is. Okay. Leave that. All right, there it is attached. Now let me send it. Yes, you should be able to. Well, what I'm doing now is I'm going around the system, which is I downloaded the syllabus and now I'm emailing it to the 5 of you. It's a work in progress right now. I just need to clear out the other students from the old cohort. Give minute as I'm cleaning this up. Yep. Okay, good. Where's this? I need you here. Good. Okay. Now send. Oh, hold on. Put a MS Bioethics. Right. Oops. Okay, you should be getting an email momentarily. It's the internship, got it. Can you see it now? Refresh your portal, your email portal.
Syllabus. Let me see if I can-
Oh, that's right. I'm going to go over the syllabus now. So, mhm. Let me know when you're able to open the syllabus through the email.
Actual syllabus, I was able to pull them.
Yes. Okay. All
I
right.
just try to save it to my desktops.
Yep. Mhm. Yeah. What I do is I open a folder on the desktop with the name of the course, right?
Yeah.
And then you can dump in there throughout the semester.
So,
Mhm. In fact, for titles, I use capitals, caps, uppercase, the title of the folder, just for consistency.
okay.
All right, so can you see the page that I have posted? That
Yes,
I have,
and I have-
all right, excellent, very good. All right, so the first is the blah, blah, blah. Most important thing here is just my cell phone number for contact. Then modules. So you have 10 modules, right? Modules 1 through 10. These are the modules that we're going to cover. Basically, this course will cover some fundamental principles in bioethics from the Catholic perspective. So that's important because there are basically two ways of doing bioethics today. And one is utilitarian and the other one is principle bioethics. Okay. And utilitarian bioethics also goes by other names, by pragmatism or legalism or consequentialism, etc. And basically is the big difference between the two systems is that for utilitarian ethics, the end justifies the means.
So can you give me an example?
Yeah. They'll say, of course, as long as it's legal, then don't worry about the ethics. So for example, if you want to have a child, in vitro is okay, because in vitro is legal. In fact, up until a couple of months ago, abortion was legal throughout the nation, up until the 9th month, right? Until the Supreme Court case of Dobbs Supreme Court, which reverted to the state, to each state, like we were in 1973. All right. So today, abortion is legal. A number of states legalized abortion right away, like California and New York, for example. So in California and New York, abortion is legal up until the 9th month. In other states, like Florida, abortion is illegal from the 15th week forward. All right. So utilitarian ethics says, as long as it's legal, don't worry about the ethics. That's because the end is a good end. As long as the end is a good end, the means are justified. Principle bioethics is the alternative that we do, and that's Catholic bioethics. Principle bioethics, the means also have to be justified in themselves. So the means also have to be ethical. So it's the higher road. It's a bigger effort. It's the less traveled road, and it's the least popular position because most people just want to get on with life and move forward, right? But we in Catholic bioethics or principle bioethics, one does not have to be Catholic to do principle bioethics. Many people who are not even religious are principle bioethicists, you know, because the means also have to be justified ethically. And that's where we use nature. Nature tells us, well, if we have a human being biologically before 1 minute before birth and 1 minute after birth, organically is the same human being. The only organs that are not functioning are the lungs. Give it a minute and they'll start functioning on average.
Use nature fundamentally.
So yes, we use nature to tell us, all right? And that therefore we use what is called natural law, because we also see a progress or a sequence of things. We covered a little bit about this in environmental bioethics, so I'm just kind of bringing you up to speed there. There are 3 stages of law, if you will. There's divine law, natural law, and positive law. Positive law is also known as civil law, is the law of humans, legislature. All right, it can happen at the county level, it can happen at the municipality, it can happen at the state level, it can happen at the national level, and it can even happen internationally. There are international laws. So those are known as positive law or civil law, legislation. A good civil law is based on natural law, because natural law is a reflection of divine law, God's will. God willed that we be alive. So what did he give us to be alive organically? A metabolism. If a cell is metabolizing, or a tissue or an organ, then we can say that that cell, tissue, or organ is alive organically. Metabolism, we can actually measure it, because science is about measuring, right? But that life is because God willed it. In other words, the fundamental principles by which metabolism occurs is by God's will. In other words, divine law. So natural law, the way nature behaves, is a reflection of divine law, right? It's a little bit like looking into a mirror. If a mirror is a true mirror, made well, and it's a flat plane of glass and so forth, it will faithfully reflect the person or the object, the mirror. But the image that's in the mirror is not the object. It's the image of the object. When we look at ourselves in the mirror, we're not in the mirror, but our image is in the mirror. Okay? So God is opaque to us directly. We cannot see him, but we can see his reflection. And that's also why in the book of Genesis, it says in the 1st chapter that we are God's image. But what does it say? Let us make man, human, in our image. So see the integration between faith and nature, between science and religion. And this course will delve deeply into that. So we're going to integrate, in this course, we're going to integrate faith with nature. We're going to integrate science with religion, so that those first 2 chapters of Genesis, right, of the creation of the universe and the creation of the human, far from being in contradiction with each other, right? Actually, they're going to complement the picture for us of who we are and who we are within our planetary system and the universe. Okay? Therefore, we're going to do evolution. I'm going to teach you all a little bit about the 4 forces of evolution. And the human, because we need to metabolize, is not exempt from evolution, organically speaking. I don't want to jump the gun too much here and give you the whole course today. But you can see more or less where we're heading. All right. And so you'll see the progress here through the modules, all the way up to module 10. So we'll ask the question, when did the human soul begin? So one big thing that we look at in this course fundamentals is when did the human begin? But we can look at the beginning of the human at two levels, at the individual level or the level of the species. So we can ask the question, when did we begin individually? All right, when does human life begin? That's a big question. It has bioethical implications, right? For example, abortion in vitro, etc. So we ask that question of where do we begin, when do we begin individually? In the next semester with the beginning of life bioethics. All right. The question in this course is, when do we begin as a species? What we call phylogenetics, not ontogenetics, which is the individual, but phylogenetics, the group. When did we begin as humans? So then we have to go into evolution because there's a fossil record. You know, if the bone is there fossilized, that creature existed millions of years ago. All right. And therefore, we're not exempt because there are anthropoid skeletons that look very similar to us, even bipedal, walking on two legs, and no other animal around is walking on two legs, which frees up the hands for synergy between the brain and the hands for tools. And that opens a whole new universe, which is the universe of technology. All right, so these are just little sparks that will cover more fully throughout the program. But there's going to be a lot of evolution in this course to see how far from being contradictory. So creation or evolution, that's not a well-posed question. It's creation and evolution work together, all right? So we'll get into all that. And in the process, we'll do a little bit of astronomy to place in situ, right? In other words, in context of the human within this world that is benevolent for life, specifically having liquid water for the, you know, from a chemist perspective, metabolism is chemical reactions in an orderly fashion, cascades and so forth. Whereas the norm in the rest of the universe is disorder, is chaos. In other words, is entropy, energy that is no longer available, basically heat energy that dissipates into the universe. So you can see that life is a counter eddy to the general tendency of energy flow in the rest of the universe, which is going toward heat energy that dissipates and is lost, it's not available for work. Whereas metabolism is a very controlled chemical reaction with activation energy that allows for cascades of other chemical reactions. And when we put them together in an orderly fashion within each cell, within each tissue and each organ, then we have life, which is not unique to us by any stretch of the imagination, the millions of species that surround us. And those species has been around for millions of years. So we're going to go there. Okay. What else do I need to say before we actually get into, they say, what do they say? Biting the bit of the racehorses, so as not to really get into the lecture, because that's coming in a couple of weeks. All right, Denisha, you back? I don't know. Anyway, the other three are not present virtually either. They'll have to see the video. So I don't know if you have any other questions. So, oh yes, sorry, back to the syllabus. So the syllabus basically is the map, the roadmap for the course, all right? And you can see the 10 modules there, so we'll have 10 lectures. And grading system, that's the standard, how to translate from percentage to letter grade and then to point system on the cumulative point average, what they call the GPA. Further down is the most important thing that I consider for any course, which is the calendar, right? And hopefully I updated it correctly. First, going backwards from the year. Well, first modules 1 through 10, there they are. Those are the 10 lectures. then it's all 2023. Good.
So the first lecture, no, the first module, we actually start January 21st.
Yeah.
Okay.
A module is lecture. All right. So a module lecture is giving the module. So each lecture is a module. And what I do for the lecture module is I send you beforehand. I send you the link for the Zoom. Now, I say this every class. I certainly prefer to have students in front of me instead of talking to the wall. All right. But sometimes some Saturdays get complicated for some people and they cannot make a little way in here. I understand. So you zoom in like Denisha is doing, and you participate like you can see. You can participate live, but virtually. All right.
And I see we don't have classes for 8th of January. I think we don't have a lecture.
Right. That's the one that I was mentioning about the research symposium that we're having.
Okay,
Of
so
the 500
there's-
kids coming?
So there's a class January 14th or January 20th.
Correct. Right. Yeah. Bottom line, the only class in January is in 2 weeks, in 2 Saturdays. That's the only one in January. Okay. And then it skips around a little bit like that. So that's why I give you this roadmap. You have the month first, then the day, and so forth. So you can follow this and put it into your calendar. And these are the lectures. So if, Yeah.
January 20th.
really? Wow, fantastic. Look at that. Yeah, it's all providential.
Like 6 months ago.
Really? There you go.
Yeah.
See? Now, I'm glad you bring that up because the third option for participating, so the first option is live one-on-one like this, in person here. Second option is virtual, like Denisha is doing, right? And the third option is watch the video. In other words, at the end of each session, I download the Zoom and translate it into a YouTube, and then I send you the link. Typically, I do that by Saturday afternoon. So I send you the link of the lecture. So if at any point you have a commitment like that, that you absolutely cannot make it to class, I ask, of course, to give this priority. But if life happens, then no problem, because you can watch the video. And so there's really no excuse for missing the lecture, which is my interest. That's what you people are paying for. So that's what you get. All right. Then the follow-up is, once I deliver the product, which is the lecture module, now you need to deliver back so that I can give you a grade. All right. And that's the summary that I've been talking about. So let me go over it a little more detail. The summary is anywhere from 2 to 4 pages of the lecture itself. All right. And what I do is I send you an outline of the lecture beforehand. So what I do typically 1 or 2 days before the actual lecture, right? I will send you an email with 3 things. It will have the link, the Zoom link. It will have the PowerPoint presentation as an attachment. And it will also have an outline in Word. Okay.
This is for lecture.
Yes, this is for the lecture. I'll send that 1 or 2 days before the lecture. So you can actually look at it beforehand and get a feel for what I'm going to be talking about. Then what you do is download the Word document. And what some students do is, even in class or virtual, as I'm talking, they're filling in the outline. Summary. So you can do bullet points, things like that, okay? But basically, you can use the outline that I give you, which is a skeleton, like a table of contents, basically, and you fill it in for each topic that I'm covering. And then if you do that at the end of the lecture, basically, you have your summary done. Don't send it in yet. Afterwards, you want to go over it, clean it up a little bit, whatever, you know, add or subtract, and then you submit that. You have to submit that outline, that summary by Wednesday midnight after the lecture. So really you have the rest of Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday midnight. I need to get that summary attached, right? In Word, not PDF. Because what I do is then Thursday morning, I download all those documents, all those summaries, print them out, and then I start writing stuff on them, you know, correcting whatever is not correct and checking whatever is correct, etc. And then I grade it, give you a grade on a 100% basis. And then I have it for the next Saturday. I have it available for you. So you get feedback week after week like that. All right. And that's the summary that I'm talking about. If you do the first few summaries very well, then you don't have to do any more summaries after that because I know that you get it. All right. Okay. So 2 to 4 pages. And the other students have had some practice already. So your very first summary will be a practice. There's no problem. I'm sure you'll do well there. What else? Oh yeah, so also leave it in Word when you send it back to me, because what I do is I like to compress. I'm a little obsessed about getting that summary. You don't worry about the pages, like I say, from 2 to 4 pages, you know, but what I do is I try to compress it, crunch it into a single page front and back, single sheet of paper. So I rearranged, I put it into wide margins, or rather narrow margins. I put down the font to maybe 0.8 or something like that, you know, so that I can compress it into one sheet of paper front and back, just for ease, all right? But you don't worry about that detail, that's on my end. You just do your summary using the outline that I gave you, and then we go from there. And the PowerPoint, you also have the PowerPoint. Another reason for the PowerPoint, oh, and then after the lecture, you'll also have the video of the lecture, right? The YouTube link. And the other reason for giving you all this is because the idea is to train leaders. In other words, to train bioethicists. As we learn, we can also teach, right? And I always say that the best student is a teacher and the best teacher is a student. In other words, as you're learning these things, these issues will come up sooner or later in our lives with our family and friends, with unknown people. And therefore, you're accumulating like a little library of the material that you can use for teaching this, right? Which also, okay, so now I want to segue into the internship. Part of the internship you can do by giving talks, either formal or informal. For example, talk in your parish about end-of-life issues, when to disconnect, when not to disconnect, and so forth. 150 hours total.
I mean, if you have
No.
like a formal talk versus an informal talk, or you talk
Right,
about
so you can be,
out,
it's up to you. So again, because this is graduate school, you know, we work on the honor principle, on the honor system, meaning that I trust all of you with the time that you log, and this is what the log looks like. Let me just,
you're gonna send us that one.
yes, I will send you, it's basically an Excel, you know how to use the Excel sheet, right? And so this is what we do. Let me just download this so I can open it up. It's that simple. 2 columns.
The date or the topic discussed or nothing.
The date, yes, so it's 2 columns. And the first column, as you can see here, well, first of all, okay, so this is, can I see, hold on. Let me make it bigger. Let me get rid of this thing. Yeah, I'll get there. Let me just get rid of all this. Okay, can you see it now? I am that bad. You can take off your glasses if you want. Okay, so we got columns and we got rows, right? And then each coordinate is a cell. These are called cells, you know that, it's very basic. So the first cell is the date. The second cell is hours, going horizontally. So just, that's it.
For the content.
Exactly. That could be cell 3, cell column C if you want. So column C is optional. You can put here comments for your own comments. You know, if you want to keep comments on who it was, what it was, when, you can fill all the other columns ad infinitum if you want to for your own reference. It's up to you. Okay. But all I need is this, because this is the bare minimum of the 150. All right. So speaking of the 150, already there's a little detail here that these numbers on column B need to be just integers and decimals so that we can add at the end. So it's not time. So with all due respect here, Father Franco, instead of putting 230, 2 point, exactly, you got it, 2.5. So we round up to the nearest half hour. Then at the end of the thing, all you do is, well, if we translate, let me just in here, enable editing. Let me turn it to the actual thing. This would be a 2.5, right? Oops. Oh, yeah, okay. The others are absolute numbers. So I can just do this here. It's not allowing me to edit. Well, anyway, you know how to add the sum function on these things, right? You know how to do that. Okay, okay, so, right. What we're looking for at the end is that the total sum here is 150. When you get to 150, stop. You may continue if you want to, but for the purpose of validating the path that I'll give you this semester, that's what needs to happen there, okay?
I think that we're gonna talk by you first.
If you want to. Yeah, that's fine. So there are many options, really. When you start thinking about it, the options are countless. You know, one option will be at the parish with a small group or larger group like that. Another option would be, for example, doing some volunteer work at a hospital or a clinic or your place of work. The overarching idea is to talk about bioethical issues with other people from the principal perspective. So that will engage people one way or another, okay? And the hottest issues right now, frankly, are either end-of-life issues, end of human life, or environmental issues, which we'll cover in lectures. But sometimes we can get into the more basic issues like the formation of conscience and also beginning of life and healthcare and so forth, right? So these are courses that you'll be taking along the way, including this one on, well, how did we start as humans? Who are the biblical Adam and Eve? Who are they biologically? You know, and when did they exist and where did they exist? We can trace it back to about more or less 200,000 years ago, Africa.
Sure. At some point, many years ago, Adam and Eve was two actual people, or there was, I don't think I'm gonna use the right word here, like a parable, or not a parable, but like a
Metaphor.
metaphor. Thank you. That's
Yep.
what I'm looking for.
It's not either or, it's and. It is both. Biblically, it's a metaphor, but it turns out that biologically, you can look up if you want what we call mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosome Adam. Turns out the whole human species, when we do phylogenetics, mitochondrial Eve, Y chromosome Adam. So Y is only transmitted by the male, and the mitochondria is mostly transmitted by the female on mammals. Yeah.
Is this a video? Or is this?
That's a concept. That's a biological concept. There are many videos on it. There's a lot of lectures on it. There's material, there's reading, right? But that's what we're going to learn.
Anything mitochondrial, so.
Is maternity inherit, mitochondrial DNA. We're talking about mitochondrial
Right,
DNA.
so when you're looking at pediatric defects, genetic pediatric defects, anything that comes from the mitochondria.
On the mitochondria, yeah, the mitochondrial
like
diseases. We'll cover mitochondrial diseases.
Fragile X, what those fragile X
No, where is the fragile? Where is the X chromosome? Physically in the cell, where? Where is it located? Where's the DNA? Where? Yeah, no, but physically, where are the chromosomes located in the cell? Inside is so obvious.
The DNA.
Where's the DNA in the cell? In what organelle? Inside what organelle? It's a ball. It's a ball. The nucleus. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So by definition, the mitochondria are where? In the cell.
In the nucleus.
No, mitochondria are in the cytoplasm.
Okay, start again.
Right, so
Let me get a visual.
our chromosomes are inside the nucleus
Correct.
of every one of our cells.
Okay.
Our mitochondrial DNA is in our mitochondria, which is outside the nucleus. In other words, in the cytoplasm,
Got it.
right?
That's basic cell biology.
Now, what exactly? It's so big. That's why it's so basic that we forget. Exactly. I'm going to take you there. So, what do we inherit from our parents? The genetics and so forth. But what cells do we get from our parents? We get one cell from my mother and one cell from my father.
Right.
The egg and the sperm.
Right.
Okay. Now, the sperm is mostly a nucleus with very little cytoplasm and a tail, the flagellum, physiologically.
Very little
Cytoplasm.
Okay.
Right? But the egg has a lot of cytoplasm. That's why the egg is larger, right? So the egg is the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Yeah, we'll get there. Don't worry. I'm just anticipating to connect the dots. But basically, so we get our mitochondria when fertilization occurs, mostly from our mother, because it's the egg mitochondria that we inherit. We get a few mitochondria from the sperm, which are emptied into the egg at fertilization, but very few, number one. Number two, the cytoplasm of the egg actually attacks that mitochondria as foreign and destroys it. So the end result is that our mitochondria in every single cell of our body is essentially maternally inherited from every human being, from men and women throughout the world. And we know that there is DNA that is mitochondrial DNA with a sequence. It codes mostly for the genes and the proteins that make up the mitochondria. Okay? It's maternally inherited. So we can trace our maternal lineage, our phylogenetics, through our mitochondria. And when we take samples of mitochondrial DNA of men and women throughout the world, we see that it goes back to a single female.
Is that what you get when you're looking at your ethnicity, like these ancestry DNAs and stuff?
Part of it, but I'm thinking no. So let me reframe this. The ancestral DNA, 23andMe, and all that.
Right.
They use the actual nuclear DNA, okay, the chromosome DNA. Why? Because they're going against the data bank of GenBank, which has the DNA genome, the human genome, which is published. It started, remember, Human Genome Project in the 1990s, went up to 2000, and then it was refined.
Yeah.
So they go against that one as the standard. You see, so that one. So therefore, it's the chromosomes which are in the nucleus. Mitochondrial DNA is more difficult to work with and sophisticated and so forth because it's in the cytoplasm and it's much smaller, etc. But our mitochondria, bottom line, our mitochondrial DNA is maternally inherited. Therefore, we can trace our maternal line. And to compensate, so as not to leave, Adam out of the picture, we can trace on the male line. What can we trace that is unique to the male? The Y chromosome. Okay, but that one we can only do on the male because we cannot find Y chromosomes on normal women. But when we take a sample of all the men in the world and look at their Y chromosome phylogenetics, we can trace it to a single male who lived around the same time, more or less, in the same place, Africa, Equatorial Africa.
And this is actually this mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosome Adam. This is traced. This is actually
That is biological. It's been out there for a couple of decades. You can look into it. There's even a Wikipedia on it. So read up and you'll see. You see, so far from. That's precisely why do they call her Eve, mitochondrial Eve, and why do they call him Y chromosome Adam? Because it's an allusion, the metaphor of our first human, the first humans who started the human race. far from being contradictory to each other, science and religion, nature and faith, they actually complement each other and give us the fuller picture. And that's what we'll get into this course. But we have to do it with principle bioethics.
So again, looking at nature.
Yes, nature is a teacher. Nature tells us. But nature is mindless. Nature is blind. In other words, nature is living or functioning according to laws, natural laws. And who established those laws? Exactly. The lawgiver, right? The supreme legislator, divine law. So natural law is a reflection of divine law. That's how God wills it. And that's the connection. Now, the utilitarians get a little uncomfortable about this because they like to be politically correct and so forth and separate sex and gender and things like that.
So, but I guess that utilitarian ethics is very choppy, very limited to what it is
Yeah.
that they're trying to accomplish, doesn't take an entire picture.
With all due respect, it's narrow-minded and it's tunnel vision and it's a limited perspective. It's narrow-minded. It's it doesn't really go deep into the issues. It wants to move on to the next issue. And it's very culturally explosive and framed also, right? Because they want to make waves and so on and so forth. But it's practical pragmatism. Utilitarian is just get it done. It's Nike's thing. Just do it, right? Or Home Depot. We can do this. Because one thing is build a house, and another thing is talk about the human conscience.
So IVF would be utilitarian.
Yes, as long as it's legal, just do it.
Natural family planning would be principle.
Absolutely, you got it. That's the next course. That's the course on beginning of life issues. That's exactly there. You see? Yeah, makes sense, no? But it makes sense. So to do principle bioethics as opposed to utilitarian, it takes a substantial dosage of humility. That we really don't know it all, that we're supposed to control technology instead of technology controlling us. And that whereas there are some things that we can do technologically, we should not do them ethically. We may not do it. So that's another thing. I talk about the distinction between can and may. It's a way of defining bioethics, principle bioethics. Is what may be done out of what can be done in science and technology today. We can do many things. We can drop nuclear bombs here and there, but should we do it? May we do it? We may not do it because that's going to kill millions of people who are innocent, and it's going to contaminate at least that region of the world for decades, maybe centuries, with nuclear activity, all right, radioactivity. And so we can do it technologically. The bombers, the F-1 bombers are flying overhead right now, but we should not do it. We may not do it. And that's like a functional definition of bioethics. What we may do out of what we can do in science and
technically looking at things through the Catholic lens, we apply the same principle throughout everything.
Exactly.
Versus picking and choosing.
Exactly. That's the other. So exactly, principles. One principle is an argument of logical consistency. An argument of logical consistency. If an individual, let's say a lizard, a gecko, you know the gecko? Geico has a gecko for their, it's a play on words, but that Geico lizard, green lizard, is actually a gecko. They have a couple of interesting characteristics. First of all, they don't have any eyelids, so they cannot close their eyes like we can, and so they're nocturnal. Otherwise, it would be too much glare for them during the day. And the other thing is that they have little hairs on their toe tips that are called setae, and these setae actually by a force that's called van der Waals force. It's like a magnet. They have, imagine magnetic molecular magnets on these little hairs, and that's what allows them to crawl up the wall and hang from the ceiling upside down and not fall. And inside, in fact, those little tiny hair-like structures are extremely inefficient, just barely. That magnet is a very weak magnet, because if they were more efficient, they would be stuck to the wall or to the ceiling, and they wouldn't be able to move one leg in front of the other. It would be too much magnetism. So it's, anyway, that's how they climb around. So a gecko, they reproduce sexually because they're vertebrates and they're reptiles. An individual gecko begins with fertilization. So lizards mate, and the male deposits the sperm inside the female, and then that female egg is fertilized. They have internal fertilization, but they produce eggs in a shell, and then the female lays out the eggs. So it's external development, but internal fertilization. When that gecko sperm fertilizes the egg of the female, fertilization, the new gecko, little baby gecko, starts individually. And that's the same logic that applies to any animal and plant that reproduces sexually. Even plants that reproduce sexually. What is the equivalent of sperm in plants? The yellow dust that spreads all over the place in spring is the pollen. You know, we just washed the car and now it's covered with the yellow dust. That's pollen, which actually contains 2 sperm cells inside the pollen grain. All right, so even plants reproduce sexually, the flowering plants. Well, fertilization, so in other words, the new individual of whatever species begins at fertilization. That is for any animal or plant on this planet. So the beginning of individual life in nature is at fertilization. All of a sudden, we become extremely confused when human life begins. Exactly, because it's not convenient, or I don't want to accept the fact that fertilization is a human. The problem is this. So a fertilized egg of any species is called a zygote, right? Which comes from the Greek zygon, which means linked. We'll get there. But the thing is that zygote is a single cell. It's a fertilized egg. A single cell fertilized, which is now diploid. In other words, it has a full complement of chromosomes, 50% from the mother, 50% from the father. So now we have a full complement of chromosomes. It's difficult, unless we introduce philosophy, to see that zygote human as fully human. Because he or she doesn't have any arms, legs, brain, or anything. It's just a single cell. But it's a totipotent cell. Has the potential to further develop into a baby and an adult, like all of us, if we give it time. You know, so allowing for the natural process to occur, the 9 months of embryonic development, plus birth, plus X number of years of decades of growth, we have an adult. But it all started with a single cell that was fertilized. And so an argument of logical consistency, if life begins at fertilization for the gecko and for the palm tree and for the ostrich that reproduce sexually, we reproduce sexually also biologically. Life begins for the human at fertilization also. But enter the philosophical arguments, how can that cell be fully human with a potential for further development? Then we have to introduce the philosophical categories of potential and actuation and so forth, you know? So
scientists, I guess,
mhm.
scientists, and wrapper on the opposite of words here.
Yeah.
Who would use the point of utilitarian ethics to support the act for abortion, what have you, then do they realize that they're being inconsistent when they're talking about the fertilization of a gecko or the plant beginning of fertilization? Do they
Right.
realize that inconsistency?
Some do and some don't. I give them the benefit of the doubt because I cannot get inside people's conscience. But I do laugh a little sarcastically at this. Most scientists have what we call a PhD. These are acronyms, and what does PhD stand for? Philosophical doctor. In other words, a PhD in academics is a terminal degree. Doesn't mean that we're terminal. I'm pretty terminal, but I think it's a 70.
It's growing.
Well, it's as far as systematic learning or awarding degrees, that's it. That's the terminal degree is the highest degree in academia, right?
Right.
Before that, we have a master's, and before that, we have a bachelor's. Before that, there's a high school certificate, et cetera, et cetera. But PhD is the maximum or the equivalent, like MD or EDD and so forth, all the different Ds, right? But the classical empirical scientists, biology, chemistry, physics, all these, they're PhDs. PhD means philosophical doctor, meaning that at this level, when we have a PhD, we're supposed to be able to philosophize about our science. So I have a philosophical doctor in genetics, right? And I also have a theological doctorate in moral theology, which means that I'm supposed to be able to philosophize about genetics and philosophize about moral theology. In other words, it's going beyond the actual biology of genetics to philosophize about it, right? Is to make connections, conjectures, to try to trace, for example, the human origin in phylogenetics to the first humans, and the possibility of when we receive a conscience from God as a creative act that is unique to each one of us and so forth. You know, we can engage in that kind of philosophy, right? Which is actually the tool for theology. So that's what PhD means in a particular field. And I chuckle sarcastically because I've been associated with education all my life and with 2 doctorates and in many different universities that I've been to. And, I've met a lot of PhDs, empirical PhDs, scientists. And as I start getting into philosophical arguments with them or dialogues, all of a sudden the dialogue degenerates and I lose them because they cannot follow.
Because it can't stay out that systematic.
Right. So internally, with all due respect, a number of these scientists, actually, they're super specialized, highly specialized technicians. You know, but they cannot really get into a philosophical argument of consistency of when does human life begin. If it begins here biologically, you know, so arguments like fully human, yes, but they're not fully human. Well, what do you mean by fully human? Because they don't have a brain. They're fully human, but they don't have a brain. In other words, organically, they need to develop. For example, anyone born in the United States is potentially a president of the United States, because that's the one requirement for being a president is one has to be born, not even naturalized. Remember how at one point Arnold Schwarzenegger wanted to be president at one point, right? But he was not American born. I understand he was naturalized, so he's an American citizen. I'm an American citizen, but I was born in Cuba. So I cannot be a president. I cannot be an American president unless the Constitution is changed, okay? But anyone born in the United States is a potential president, potential, you know. Whether they actuate that potentiality or not is a different story. It will take years to see, you know. And in fact, one of the 300 million that we are, 300 plus million, does become and will be, right? In fact, with the election of President Obama the first time around, remember, one issue was, where was he born? He was born was he born in Africa? Or was he born in Hawaii? There was a question about that. And what certificate was produced eventually to legitimize that, because that would have made that election invalid, the simple fact of where the person was born. regardless, totally, absolutely about his qualifications. These are philosophical arguments, you know. And I cannot change the place where the person was born, but we can see that whether that person qualifies or not qualifies for being a president. Okay, so you see, these are arguments that are philosophical arguments, and that's precisely the argument of logical consistency. Logic is one of the branches of philosophy. If a gecko begins a fertilization, logically, a human begins a fertilization because we reproduce biologically, we reproduce sexually. Then we have to understand potency and actuality. We can say that a human zygote is fully human with potential for further development. In other words, leave him or her alone in their place, which is the womb, and on average, 9 months later, that will be a baby. And on average, decades later, that will be an adult human, not a gecko, not another species. So you see, the species defines us substantially, who we are. And that's a genetic thing. If I have the genetic makeup, then I'm human. Okay, so that's how we combine principle of bioethics into arguments that are deep and rooted in nature, and not by the sway of the cultural wind. Okay, well, I ended up saying something about the course and the coming courses. But let's see. No summary for this first meeting, please. No summaries. Anything else? Tanisha, you back yet? Okay, she left the recording on. Okay, Elizabeth, you good?
Yeah.
You see how, yeah, you see how we navigate? Yeah. Okay, sorry that it took longer than I was expecting.
No, it's okay.
We actually got into, you see how,
At
this
least
thing
no
goes.
summaries have to be turned into the warehouse to get some notes.
Wow, yeah. Mhm.
So that's really-
Yeah, yeah. You'll see, all this, we'll be reviewing all this back in full detail. All right, if there are no further questions or comments, then I'm going to stop the recording. And then